Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachanane Nirvishesha Shunjavari Paschakshadesha Tadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaurabhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Read from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10 chapter 29 verse 5. Duhyanchobi yayu kaschid doham hitva samutsukah payodasritya samyavam anudvasya parayayu. Nuhancha, in the middle of milking the cows, you went away, kaschid, some of them, doham, the milking, hitva, abandoning, samutsukha, extremely eager, paya, milk, adi sritya, having placed on the stove, samyavam, cakes made of flour, anudvasya, without removing from the oven, apara, others, yayu, went. Translation: some of the gopis were milking cows when they heard Krishna's flute. They stopped milking and went off to meet him. Some left milk curdling on the stove, and others left cakes burning in the oven. Purport: the eagerness of these cowherd girls, so loving, devoted to the young Krishna, is shown here. Some of them were getting dressed, feeding milk to their infants, or rendering personal service to their husbands, but they all gave up these duties and went to meet Krishna. Other gopis were taking their evening meals, washing themselves, putting on cosmetics, or applying kajal to their eyes. But all the gopis stopped these activities at once and, though their clothes and ornaments were in complete disarray, rushed off to Krishna. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop them, but Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Purport: some of the young gopis were married, and their husbands tried to stop them. The unmarried girls had to deal with their fathers and brothers and other relatives. None of these relatives would have ordinarily allowed even the young girls' dead bodies to go alone into the forest, but Lord Krishna had already engaged his internal potency, and thus the entire romantic episode unfolded without interference. Some of the gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their houses. Instead, they remained home with their eyes closed, meditating upon him in pure love. Purport. Throughout the 10th canto, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives elaborate poetic commentaries on Lord Krishna's pastimes. It is not always possible to include these extensive descriptions, but we will quote in its entirety his comments on this verse. And our sincere recommendations to the learned Vaishnava beauty that a qualified devotee of the Lord present the entire commentary of Srila Vishnu Chakravarti on the 10th canto. It was a separate book which will undoubtedly be appreciated by the devotees and non-devotees alike. The Acharya's comments on this verse are as follows. Oh, this is a long purport. In this context, we will make our analysis according to the method described by Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani. There are two categories of gopis, the eternally perfect and those who have become perfect by practicing bhakti yoga, sadhana siddhas. The sadhana siddhas are two categories, those who belong to special groups and those who do not. And there are also two classes of the gopis belonging to special groups, namely the Shruticharis, those who come from the group of personified Vedas, and the Rishicharis, those who come from the group of sages who saw Lord Ramchandra in the Dandakaranya forest. This same fourfold categorization of the gopis is given in the Padma Purana. Gopiyas tu Srutayogyeya Rishi Ja Gopa Kanyaka Deva Kanyas Rajendra Namanusya Katanchana. It is understood that some of the gopis were personified Vedic literatures, while others are reborn sages and daughters of cowherds or demigod maidens. But by no means, my dear king, are any of them ordinary humans. Here we are informed that although the gopis appeared to be human cowherd girls, they actually were not. And thus the contention that they are mortals is refuted. The daughters of the cowherds referred to here as Gopa Kanyas must be eternally perfect, since we never hear of them having executed any sadhana. Their apparent sadhana of worshipping goddess Katyayani in the role of gopis merely manifests their manner of playing among human beings, and the Bhagavatam narrates the account of this worship only to show how they had fully taken on the role of cowherd girls. That the Gopa Kanya gopis are actually Nitya Siddhas, eternally perfect devotees of the Lord, is established by the statement in Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhi, which proves that they are the Lord's spiritual pleasure potency. Similarly, we have the words of Gautamiya Kantar Hladini Ya Maha Shakti. Further corroboration of their eternal perfection is that these gopis, being co-eternal with Lord Krishna, their lover, are mentioned along with him in the 18-syllable mantra, the 10-syllable mantra, and others. And also that the worship of these mantras and also the shrutis that present them have been in existence in beginningless time. The Devakanyas, daughters of the demigods who are mentioned in the verse beginning Sambhavas Tvamara Striya, are explained in Sri Ujjvala Nilamani as partial expansions of the gopis who are eternally perfect. That the Srutichari gopis, personified Vedas, are sadhana siddha is understood from the following words of theirs quoted in Brihad Vamana Purana. Kandarpa Koti Lavanye Tvai Driste Manangsi Na Kamani Bhavam Asadya Smara Shabd Adya Samsaya Yata Tvaloka Vasanya Kama Tatvena Gopika Bhajanti Ramana Matva Shakirsha Janinas Tata. Since we have seen your face, which possesses the beauty of millions of cupids, our minds have become lusty after you like those of young girls, and we have forgotten all other allurements. We have developed the desire to act toward you as do the gopis who dwell on your transcendental planet and who manifest the nature of Cupid by worshipping you with the idea that you are their paramour. The Rishichara gopis are also sadhana siddhas, as stated in Ujjvala Nilamani. Gopala Pasaka purvam aprapta abhishta siddhayaha. Previously, they were all Maharshis living in the Dandaka forest. We find evidence of this in the Padma Purana Uttarakhanda. Drishva Ramam Harim Tatra Bhoktam Aichan Su Vigraham Te Sarve Stritvam Apana Samadbhutas Sha Gokule Harim Samprapya Kamena Tato Mokta Bhavarnavat. This verse says that upon seeing Lord Ramchandra, the sages in the Dandaka forest desired to enjoy Lord Hari. In other words, the sight of Lord Rama's beauty reminded them of Lord Hari Gopal, their personal object of worship, and they then wanted to enjoy with them, but out of embarrassment they did not act on that desire. Whereupon Lord Sri Rama, who is like a desire tree, gave his mercy to them, even though they had not voiced their request. Thus their desire was fulfilled, as stated by the words beginning Te Sarve. By means of their lusty attraction, they became freed from the ocean of material existence, the cycle of birth and death, and coincidentally they got the association of Hari in conjugal love. In the present verse of the Bhagavatam, we understand that it was the gopis who had children who were kept forcibly at home. This fact is clear from verses yet to come. Matara pitara putra yat pati apatya sushradam anuvriti anga and pati sutanvaya bratra bandhavan. In his comments on the 10th canto, Srila Kavikarnapura Goswami mentions this fact. Without trying to repeat all his thoughts on this verse, we will give the gist of his purport. Upon seeing the personal form of Lord Sri Ramchandra, the sages who were worshippers of Lord Gopal immediately became elevated to the mature platform of spontaneous devotion, automatically reaching the stages of firm attraction, faith, attraction, and attachment, but they had not yet completely freed themselves of all material contamination. Therefore, Sri Yoga Maya Devi arranged for them to take birth in the wombs of gopis and become cowherd girls. By associating with the eternally perfect gopis, some of these new gopis fully manifested Purva Rag, loving attraction for Krishna as soon as they reached puberty. This kind of attraction develops even before one meets the beloved. When these new gopis got the direct audience of Krishna and physically associated with him, all the remaining contamination became burned up, and they achieved the advanced stage of prema, sneha, and so on. Even though they were in the company of their cowherd husbands, by the power of Yogamaya, the gopis remained unsullied by sexual contact with them. Rather, they were situated in purely spiritual bodies that Krishna enjoyed. On the night they heard the sound of Krishna's flute, their husbands tried to stop them, but by the merciful assistance of Yogamaya, the sadhana siddha gopis were able to go forth to their beloved together with the nitya siddha gopis. Other gopis, however, because of not getting the good fortune of associating with the nitya siddha gopis and other advanced gopis, had not achieved the stage of prema, and so their contamination was not completely burned away. They entered the company of their cowherd husbands, and after sexual union with them gave birth to children. But a short time later, even these gopis developed their purva raga by hankering intensely for the physical association of Krishna, a hankering they acquired by associating with the advanced gopis. Becoming worthy recipients of the mercy of the perfected gopis, they assumed transcendental bodies fit to be enjoyed by Krishna, and when Yogamaya failed to help them overcome their husbands' attempts to keep them from going out, they felt themselves cast into the worst calamity. Viewing their husbands, brothers, fathers, and other family members as enemies, they came close to dying. Just as other women might remember their mothers or other relatives at the time of death, these gopis remembered the sole friend of their very life, Krishna, as stated in the present verse of Bhagavatam, beginning with the word antar. It is implied that those ladies were not able to exit because they were held back by their husbands, who were standing before them with sticks in their hands, scolding them. Although these gopis were perpetually absorbed in love for Krishna, At that particular time they meditated upon him and cried within, "Alas, alas, O only friend of our life, O ocean of the artistic skills of Vrindavan for us, please let us become your girlfriends in some future life, because at this time we cannot see your lotus-like face with our eyes. So be it. We shall look upon you with our minds." Each of them lamenting to herself in this way, the gopis stood with their eyes shut and meditated deeply upon him. So, these verses were describing how the gopis, being attracted to Krishna, left all their different duties. Some were milking cows, some were boiling milk, some were baking cakes in the oven, etc. So they dropped all of these engagements, and then they went towards Krishna because of his flute sound and remembering his beauty. And their husbands and brothers and fathers and mothers and relatives tried to stop them, but in most cases they couldn't. But then it describes that some of them were confined within the house by their parents or husbands, etc. And they had the misfortune of missing that first Ras Leela of Krishna. So the purport here describes how there are different types of gopis. Some are Nitya Siddha and some are Sadhana Siddha. And the Sadhana Siddhas were divided into different categories. The personified Vedas, later we'll see their prayer. And when the Lord is waking up, they recite prayers. In one of those prayers, they mention their desire to be like the gopis. So then their desire was fulfilled when Krishna appeared. And the others are the sages of Dandakaranya who saw Ramachandra and desired to have a conjugal relationship with him. So they were born as gopis in cowherd families, and then their desire was fulfilled when they saw Krishna. So these are sadhana siddhas too. And besides that, then there are other sadhana siddhas who are coming from the material world, not specifically the personified Vedas or the rishis from the Dandakaranya forest, but they have, through sadhana, become attracted to the Lord. So all of these gopis were involved, the Nitya Siddhas and the Sadhana Siddhas, etc. Some could not go. So explanation is they were not at the highest level. They were not yet qualified. So they were prevented by their husbands and whatever. We see that those who were very qualified, somehow they were able to escape in spite of the opposition from their parents, husbands, etc. Some could not. So these are considered to be less fortunate. And it's described here that they became absorbed in meditation upon Krishna with pure love. So why were they not allowed? Of course, we can say maybe their parents and whatever were stronger, but the answer is ultimately that it was the will of the Lord because they were not yet qualified. So they were almost qualified, but not yet qualified. So the act of this obstacle, keeping them from the Ras Leela, was an arrangement by which they came to perfection. So it's later described that through this longing and separation, due to being prevented from leaving the house, they became purified. So they were almost at the highest level, but there was some minor obstacle. And then when they were separated from Krishna because of these obstacles of their parents and husbands, etc., then that great longing for Krishna purified them of the last remaining contamination or whatever, and they became qualified. So later they were allowed to enter into the Ras Leela on the succeeding nights. So, therefore, though there was a temporary obstacle here, this was eventually overcome because of their great attraction to the Lord. So here it describes how they meditated on the Lord. Later describes that they gave up their bodies. So explanation is that they did not actually die, because dying the night of the Ras Leela would have been very inauspicious, and nobody dies in Vrindavan anyway. So that means giving up the body means something like Brahma giving up his body when he creates different things. So he gives up one body, and then he rejects that mentality, so to speak, and takes up another body. So they gave up that identity, or that previous impure nature, and they attained pure natures. So we can say in one sense they gave up their bodies and automatically assumed a pure spiritual body which no one could recognize was any different, but actually it was pure. So in that body, later on, they were able to join Krishna in the Ras Leela and participate fully in the activities. So in this way, these gopis, though it's described here that they were less fortunate, ultimately, by the arrangement of the Lord, they attained perfection and were able to experience the highest bliss with Krishna. So there's no misfortune for them ultimately. So here we have various types of participants in the pastimes of Krishna. Here it is, of course, the gopis. We have Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas, etc. So this also goes for other groups. The cowherd boys also will have Sadhana Siddhas, like Subal and Sridama, etc. And then there will be some who have reached perfection through sadhana. There's no specific groups like personified Vedas, etc., but some devotees who have perfected themselves through sadhana, and then they become perfect. And even some who are not quite perfect, but by their association with other Nitya Siddhas or Sadhana Siddhas, then they attain the highest state when they join the pastimes. And similarly with elders as well. They could be both groups, Sadhana Siddhas, Nitya Siddhas, and persons about to reach perfection. So this gives an opportunity for those who are in the material world to eventually reach the Supreme Lord. And we don't make, here we see there's not much differentiation between these different groups. The Sadhana Siddhas are there with the Nitya Siddhas, and they all equally are able to participate in the Ras Leela. So there's no sense of difference or discrimination between them, in spite of the fact that the sadhana siddhas were in the material world and now entered into the spiritual realm. So once the person doing sadhana attains perfection, then there is no sense of difference with the other persons there. It's only from our point of view that we will distinguish the different groups, simply to show that some are nityas, perfect devotees, and others have attained that position through sadhana. But for practically speaking, in the Ras Leela, there's no distinction among the gopis, saying one is sadhana siddha and one is nitya siddha, etc. There's no identification like that. So, in other words, through the process of sadhana, one can attain an individual relationship with the Supreme Lord, as the gopis here attained a direct relationship with Krishna and were able to participate in the Ras Leela. So, in any of the different rasas in the spiritual world, one can attain a position where one can serve the Lord directly, whether it's in Sakya or Vatsalya or Madhurya or Dasya. Therefore, there is a great impetus for the devotees in the material world to progress in their sadhana so they can attain this very exalted position. So here we have the ultimate rasa, Madhurya rasa, which is also called Ujjvala rasa, which means very bright, very bright rasa. And it is in this rasa that the most extraordinary emotions or bhavas manifest because of the strength of that prema. So the opposition here of the husbands and parents and relatives and brothers, etc., is one of the obstacles that they have to overcome. And we see that they succeeded. By and large, they succeeded. Some, of course, did not. Most of them succeeded. So they had a very, very intense love for Krishna, such that their parents and their brothers and husbands, etc., could not act as an obstacle for them, in spite of the fact that there was this physical opposition. Apart from the physical opposition, there was also the we can say the mental opposition, and that was described previously, where it's described that Krishna had stolen their hearts. And what that means is he had stolen their sense of dharma and their self-control and their shyness. All of this was stolen by Krishna. They forgot all of this. So the attraction for Krishna was stronger than their sense of dharma and whatever. And this is reflected here in the opposition. So the parents would oppose because it is against dharma for the young girls to go out at night. Of course, the husbands would oppose because they say, why are you going out into the forest? You're here in the house. And of course, brothers and others would also be opposed. So there was physical opposition, of course, based all on this idea of swadharma, etc. Yet they overcame all of this for Krishna. So this is a little remarkable in comparison to the other participants in the rasa, for those in Vatsalya or Sakya or Dasya do not have to overcome this type of obstacle and the sense of breaking even dharma to serve the Lord. There's no opposition of others to serve the Lord. So the cowherd boys are not opposed by their parents for serving Krishna, and nor are the elder cowherd people. They all very willingly and publicly do this. So this, the love of the gopis at this stage which is the parakya form, is opposed by all the parents and the brothers and the husbands, etc. And of course, it is in opposition to the regular sense of dharma. So all of these obstacles are overcome by the gopis because of their love for Krishna. So this shows the great power of their love. If the love is married love, then there's no opposition in this sense. If the husband calls, then the wife comes, and the parents don't object, nobody objects. So this is a peculiar situation in the parakya form of Madhurya Rasa, where there's great opposition, and we find here the gopis overcome that. So this illustrates the great attraction of their love for Krishna. So this whole incident it describes only the first night. But Krishna had Ras Lila every night after that until he left. So we can imagine similar situations in one sense, because the attraction of the rasa dance, etc. They would go out every night. There may or may not have been opposition if they went out secretly or whatever. It's described that actually many of them didn't even know that their wives were gone. How is that? Because another form replaced them when they went out at night. So their husbands could not even object anymore if they left secretly, because there was a form sitting in the house with them, with the husbands and the parents, etc. So they didn't even know in many cases. So there was no opposition. So there was this great opposition here, and then there was some later arrangement by which everything was concealed. In any case, it is all done secretly, so there is still this sense of insecurity, fear, etc., because they have to do this all unknown to their parents and husbands, etc. And in all cases, they did this continually because of their attraction for serving Krishna. So this shows the great strength of their love.
We find that there are different types of gopis, like Munichari gopis, where the intensity of love to Krishna was the same, or they had different intensity. The different gopis, sets of gopis.
It's not mentioned whether the Shruticharis were stronger than the Rishicharis or whatever. No sense of that. Now, of course, ultimately, when they do attain a position in serving Krishna, there are all different types, but it is not designated whether sadhakas only come up to this level and others come up to another level. But there's all different types of gopis depending on their particular personality in relation to Krishna. Some are bolder, some are shyer, some are more innocent, etc. So there's a great variety of gopis also, but the distinctions are not based upon whether they're sadhana siddhas or nitya siddhas, etc.
Maharaj, what about this? In the purport it is said there's some Devakanya also there. Devakanya means the daughter of demigods. Who are there actually?
Here it's not actually explained. But apparently it was when Brahma went to the milk ocean, and then the Lord replied to, after he meditated, and the Lord replied to the Devatas, you also should appear in the family of the Yadus, etc. Yeah, the demigods. So many of them, amsas of them, were the Yadus. They participated with the Yadus in their pastimes. So it's also described that I believe it was the Vamana exists in the heavenly kingdom. So he had wives. So their amsas became gopis also.
Another question is, Maharaj, see, you are explaining that even those who are insecure also, there are also some sadhana siddha. In the case of Madhurya also, we see that those who are in sadhana siddha, not able to participate when Krishna is playing the flute because of intense desire to participate in the Rasalila, and they become purified.
Yeah.
But how it happened, it goes to the this gopas, those in sadhana siddha, how they become purified.
Well, we can say that those were not actually sadhana siddhas yet. They were almost sadhana siddhas, and then after the separation from Krishna, they became purified and they became sadhana siddhas. So they were almost at the highest level, but not quite. So they were not sadhana siddhas yet. And when they became sadhana siddhas through separation, then they were allowed to participate in the Rasalila.
But there is no separation for the gopas, because they can go to for the gopa. I am saying that there is no separation for the gopa because they can go at any time. There is no restriction for them.
Whether we have, possibly we can say that some arrangement is made that their parents keep them at home or something like that for some time until they get old enough or whatever like this. They're younger, so they can't join us pastimes until they reach a certain age. So we can say that maybe the younger cowherd boys, those are the youngest ones. After Krishna reached a certain age, about 4 and a half years, he went out and herded the cows. And then he herded the cows all the way until he left when he was 11 years old. So in that age, some of the cowherd boys were actually younger, and then they grew up also. So maybe those stayed with their parents, and then later on they joined the pastimes when they were 5, 6 years old or something. Possibly. It's not explained anywhere, but that's a possible solution.
What about gopas? They had the same intensity of love in Golok Vrindavan, or?
No, the Sakya rasa is considered less intense than the Madhurya rasa. And Vatsalya is considered a little higher, more intense. Like Yasoda's love goes up to raga. And generally the cowherd boys goes up to, I think, sneha or something, pranaya. So it's a little bit less. But then we have exceptional cases that the intimate cowherd boys, they almost get up to the highest level also into Mahabhava even, some of them. No, they're Nitya Siddhas.
Is there anyone like, is there any name of Sadhana Siddha in Sakyarasa?
Nothing is mentioned there about sadhana siddhas. Of course, we find in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita that Gopakumar is a sadhana siddha.
Is it correct that Gopakumar is Sadhana Siddha?
Huh?
How can we understand this? He's a Sadhana Siddha, Gopakumar.
Well, he was in the material world and he was wandering around doing sadhana.
But there are so many, even the Nitya Siddha also come to the material world and act as like a sadhana. Sadhana Siddha.
Yeah, there could have been, but it doesn't mention anywhere that he was previously there. It just says he was doing sadhana and then met a guru, etc. Then he finally attained the Lord.
One is the gopis are eternal and their children and the husbands.
Well, so the sadhana siddhas, obviously, they reach perfection, whereas the nitya siddhas are always there with the Lord. The sadhana siddhas appear at a certain time with the Lord, so they're not eternal. After they become sadhana siddhas, then they're there with the Lord eternally. But before that, they weren't there.